When we talk about martial arts specifically in the light of this lecture, and especially in the way I've been taught them, the way I adapt them to my life, we're almost trying to box water or catch a cloud, because life itself, by definition, is an entire state of chaos. As such, when we get involved in a creative process, what we're trying to do is try to bring a little glimmer, a little sliver of control to the chaos. For me personally, that's that magic spark. It's not that we ever stop creating or we stop being in a state of flow or flux. We just forget that we're in it. And we're trying so much to be constantly in control of what we're doing, we forget we're not supposed to be. This morning is a prime example of that. I got a message off Maxim saying, "Yo, Jay, you're on." And I was like, oh dear, because there was a little bit of a technical miscommunication with regards to time zones and things like that. So what I've had to do today is move a slight pivot point, because my entire lecture, as it was planned this morning, involved physical demonstrations. I had my training partner there with me. But now it's 2 hours out. I'm just going to have to do some creativity on my own, pivot on the spot. This is what we call creativity within the chaos, riding that storm. This is our natural state. And for me, this is what martial arts has always, always allowed me to do. The gentleman that was the biggest influence on me, and indeed many, many other people, was Bruce Lee. Now, for those of you that don't know Bruce Lee, you might want to leave the lecture right now, because I'll start insulting you in the next 30 seconds. No, I won't. Bruce Lee is arguably the most famous martial artist of all time, certainly the most famous within the martial arts community and outside of it as well. If I was to say cowboy, people will go John Wayne, Clint Eastwood. If I was to say rock star, people may go to Elvis. But when you talk about kung fu cinema and martial arts, almost without exception, people will go to Bruce Lee first and foremost. Even when you look at people like Jackie Chan, Jean-Claude Van Damme, they're very much second tier. So Bruce Lee first, and then everyone else. He was simultaneously the best thing that happened to it and the worst thing that happened to it, because everyone else is always seen as an imitator of Bruce Lee. But more than that, Bruce Lee came up with his own martial arts style, Jeet Kune Do, literally translated the way of the intercepting fist. But for him, it wasn't about fighting. It was about personal growth. Martial arts just happened to be the vessel for that personal growth. And that's something else I want to keep in mind today as I'm talking to you. When I refer to what martial arts has done for me, what it will do, what it will help achieve, take your copy and paste from your computer, take martial arts out, take any given discipline, pop it in, because the principle that it applies is exactly the same. You can find just as much fulfillment from painting, from sculpture, from tiddlywinks, from whatever it is you do. Okay, the idea is we find that actualization within what we do. And something that Bruce Lee very, very famously said, specific to martial arts, was as he looked around, he saw that you had a style such as karate. Now, if I do a demonstration from my desk as best as I can, if you look at a style like karate, they have some rules and regulations within that. It's a very linear style system. So a karate block and a punch would be something like a rising block, which is very, very stiff, very hard. Very linear, very, very solid. Then you get a style such as Wing Chun, which is a Chinese system. Now, Wing Chun, much, much softer in what they do. Tai Chi, even softer again. And what Bruce Lee saw was within all these things is that you had these compartmentalizations of truth. You had a partiality of everything. And he came up with a phrase that was pertinent. And it was that man, the living creature, the creating individual, is always more important than any style or system. Because what he was seeing was everybody was no longer doing anything about combat. They were trying to fix it. They were trying to make it fit their own individual mold. And we have a habit of doing this as human beings, especially when we're creating. There's nothing worse than being in that situation where you've got a vision in your head. And no matter what you do, no matter how much you're trying to apply that, it isn't coming through. You can't see it, you can't visualize it, you just can't grasp it. And the more you try and grasp it, the more it just slips through those fingers and comes away. What Bruce Lee was trying to get to was, look, forget what you're supposed to do, forget the structure, forget these rules and regulations, and instead look within yourself and honestly express who you are as a human being and who you are at a given moment in time. And it's a very, very difficult thing to do, the ability to honestly express oneself. This is what martial arts enables you to do. The reason it does this is very, very simple. If you're involved in a situation where you're now having to deploy your martial arts in a combative setting, I'm going to use that as a sporting situation, a self-defense situation, call it what you will. But if you're tied up and involved in situations such as that, you can no longer rely on step A leading to step B because it's dynamic. It is chaos. I've got a very good idea if someone's swinging a punch at my head that they have ill intent towards me. What happens after that, I have zero control over. Are they going to kick? Are they going to headbutt me? Are they going to try and grab me? Are the friends going to join in? I have to be able to pivot and react on the spot. So my creativity in such a situation, my ability to tap into who I am honestly, is very much dependent on that training that I've done myself and put the time in myself. This is no different than anything else that we do. When we free ourselves from rules and from confines, it's this ideal of, oh, I'm free from rules, I'm free from regulations, I'm free from control. But it doesn't work without the rules and regulations and control in the first place. You cannot break the scales. You cannot do abstract painting. You cannot write Shakespeare without first having your alphabet, without having your basic grammar. We can only break the rules once we know the rules. And again, martial arts has that ability to allow us to do that. Honestly express oneself through the human body. And there are various phases to which I'm going to get into. Now, the first phase is what we call natural action. And this is what everybody does. So if I was to just say to you, okay, guys, here's a pair of boxing gloves, go at it. All you would probably do is just start swinging, because that's all you know how to do. I haven't taught you anything yet, unless you've done something before. It's just this prime instinct. This goes way back to when Tharg and Ugg had a stick and a rock about 2 million years ago, and they just started banging away at each other. That was what they did, just picked up first thing and hit. Animals in nature, they have no formal training. They just fight. They do it instinctively. They do it naturally. This is this freedom that we're talking about, but it's wild. It's uncontrolled. This is like a fire raging through the forest. This is honest in the sense that it's all we know. And what we know is literally nothing. So is this honest expression of oneself manifested through that creative process? No, it's not. It's just what we have and where we start. Whether that's a paintbrush and a canvas, whether that's a camera and a roll of film, whatever it happens to be, it's blank. Without any form of ability or skill, we're going to go right into naturalness, and it's basically complete chaos. The other end of the scale, when we come into the complete order, is this middle phase of the creative process. So again, I'm going to use the creative bit with fighting. When we first start, we're swinging like this. Then I'm going to teach you 3 simple punches. Got a jab, got a cross, got a hook. Okay, so it's got 1, got a 2, got a 3. When I first teach you this, you're going to go from just wild crazy, then you're going to start going, and you'll have a very stilted, very regimented, very controlled physical expression of what you're doing right there. Because we're now in the middle phase. The single worst phase of any creative endeavor, of anything that we're learning, is when you found something that you want to do, you're trying to do, and you're learning how to do it. And the reason it's the worst phase and the hardest phase of everything to do is because it's not natural anymore. You don't fully grasp what you're doing. It's not intertwined in part of your being. So you're at this very awkward stage where you've discarded what is natural to you. You're now doing entirely what is unnatural to you. And as such, your expression, in theory, should be better than the naturalness. In practice, what actually happens is it's worse. And it's a tremendous paradox. Before you will become comfortable, before you will start to really get everything going forward, you will become much, much worse than you are now. We refer to this as letting go in martial arts, investing your loss, as the saying goes. So you can give away what you have, let it go, push it out the table, and embrace the fact that for the next 6 months, or whatever it is you're doing, 3 months, 2 years, 30 years in my case, you're going to have problems and you're going to suck. Because what you're going to do is get through this, and this is the barrier you're going to break through. That brings us to the third stage in the creative process, which is unnatural naturalness, or natural unnaturalness, as Bruce Lee used to phrase it. This is where these skills that we've just taken, that were so new, so fresh, and so stilted, they're now woven into what we do. This is where we seek that creative expression, because now I've still got my freedom of when I'm flailing my fists around. I've got the mechanic and the precision of the art and the thing I've just been touching. But now it's natural. There's nothing I have to think about to do that. Someone comes in, there's a jab, there's a weave, there's a hook. It comes as part of what I'm doing. So my creative process now has had to go through this funnel. And this funnel is rigidity. So I have to take freedom, I have to take order, now I have to put them together. And that's that yin yang concept that's always taught so much within the martial arts. It's that balance of the hard and the soft, the masculine and the feminine, call it what you will. And that's the martial arts physical creative endeavor and physical creative process, as compact as you can possibly get it. The beauty with it is you can take that same process in everything that you do. Martial arts just happens to be a very apparent method of demonstrating that to you. You can do the same thing with a push-up. I teach how to do a push-up. Eventually, you get better at doing push-ups. When you first learn it, not a clue. You get hurt, your muscles are hurting, you get your form going in. But then after a while, you'll just drop and give me 10 push-ups, you won't even think about it. But even now, I still find better ways to do my push-ups. I find better ways to run. I find better ways to punch. I find better ways to kick, because I'm constantly re-engineering that creative process that goes on within me. This morning is a prime example of that. I've had to basically take 50% of my talk and transfer it to a verbal medium rather than a physical medium, because I'm simply not in a position where I can actually have my partner to teach it. But that's the chaos. And that's the big takeaway from the creativity and the freedom. Creativity is controlling chaos, but it isn't control. It's riding that wave. We're surfers. That's what we do when we create. One of the hardest things to do is to look at where we stand in the grand scheme of things, and then put honest eyes on where we are and how we're working. The ability to objectively assess what you do, whether you're an artist, an actor, sculptor, fighter, it's a rare unicorn, because we do one of two things. We either really undervalue what we do, or we vastly overvalue what we do. So those honest eyes that we put on ourselves, it's difficult because they exist in a vacuum. One of the things that we always try and teach, or certainly my teacher always gives to me, is don't judge yourself. And he's not in any sort of, everyone's equal value, everyone's good, or anything like that. That's a different philosophical construct. What he tries to get us to do is not become attached to the result of things. If I am attached to what happened before, and I'm going to use a punch in the face for the example. For anyone that's never been punched in the face, can I recommend this as a life experience to you? It doesn't have to be hard, but it's a tremendously liberating experience if you can put a boxing glove on someone and then they'll go and hit you, because it does one of two things. You'll recognize, oh, actually, that wasn't that bad. And then you start to get a little freer up, because most of the things that stops us moving forward creatively, certainly as martial artists and in life, is fear. Fear of getting hurt, fear of what's going to happen next, fear of what might happen in the future. All the bits and pieces come into our minds. So if I get hit in the face, it gives me a good shot. I can't worry about what that person just did to me, because it's in the past. I can't worry about what they might do to me in the future, because it's in the future. Neither of these I have any control over. All I have left is where I'm at right now, in the middle. That's where we find that balance of things. I'm not attached to what happened before. I don't care about what happens afterwards. I'm in the moment right now. That's the only thing that's constant. So when I'm here and that next punch is coming into me, that's a slip. The next punch, that's a slip. Then it's a weave. I hit the person back. I'm engaged actively with the person that I'm doing. What does this have to do with creativity? Well, the reason it becomes creative is I'm in the moment. I'm reacting, or I'm acting, or I'm initiating, whatever it happens to be, but I'm doing it all in the moment. And this is one of the things that I found martial arts has helped me to do. I don't worry about the end result of what I'm doing when I'm fighting. I can't, because if I'm stuck in the future, I'm not concentrating on the past. I will lose that fight. If I'm worried about what started it, or that punch that just hit me that's now hurting, I'm now in the past. I'm not in the present. I will lose that fight. If I do anything other than allow myself to be fully engaged, I'm losing that fight. That could be a trophy in my previous career. That literally could be in my life. And there's been several encounters I've had where it's led to that. So that ability to just find yourself in that present moment and be there, that's where the magic happens. And that's that fine, delicate balance of that creative point. So whether we're acting, whether we're sculpting, whether we're painting, I'll keep throwing those examples out there because they're the ones just roll off the tongue. We find ourselves in the moment, honestly expressing ourselves at that moment in time with what we have. Now, we might not be the best fighter. We might not be the best painter. We might not be the best actor. It doesn't matter. The point is at that fixed moment in time, for a moment, we're present and we allow what's in us to come out. So whether we're the best doesn't matter. What matters is whether we're our best. And it's that honest expression of ourselves that we're trying to bring out from within. That's what martial arts has given me. That ability to just say, right here, right now, this is me, Jay. And that's what it taps into. And it's a beautiful thing. Now, the other thing that I'm always fond of saying, because you've noticed I like to tell stories quite a lot. There's an old folk tale called Stone Soup, famously updated with a UK comedy show called Only Fools and Horses. And they did it as a Trigger's broom. And it tells a tale of a poor traveller that knocked on a castle gate. And he said, excuse me, would you be so kind as to give me a pot of boiling water, please? I wish to make some soup out of this stone that I found. And the chef was like, what do you mean, stone? He goes, yeah, make a soup out of this stone, please. Could I just have some water, just a small pot of water? And the chef said, sure. Normally didn't like beggars at his door, but he allowed it. So he put the stone in the pot. And the beggar went, oh, yeah. Oh, I smell that. Smell the aroma coming off the stone. It's fantastic. He said, could I just trouble you for a pinch of salt? Just to season it, please. And the chef was like, no problem. Just passing the salt. Sprinkle the salt like that. He said, oh, so he's stirring it around and the salt's coming in. He said, sniff of pepper, please. So the chef gets the pepper and passes it to him. He's going, oh, this is going to be good. Look at that tasting. Do you know what would really offset this if you have it? Do you have any stock? A little bit of vegetable stock, a little beef stock. Oh, yeah, sure. Put some stock in it. You can see where the story's going. He then added a bit of an onion for some flavor, then some vegetables. By the time he got to the end of it, there was meat, there was rice, all these vegetables, this stock, the salt, the pepper, and he had this glorious pot of soup. And he said to the chef, he said, look, all of this just for a simple stone. Now, obviously, there's a moral and a story behind that. And the idea is that what we start with our stone is our base. Where we take that, that's where the magic happens. That's a creativity piece, because we just add little bits and pieces to what we do, to the point where the stone isn't important anymore. We started with the stone. By the time we got our soup at the end of it, that's not stone soup anymore. It's something else. But we still needed that started that creative process. So even when we go to the most base, useless thing that we do and we start with, it's a start. It's a start. And in martial arts, that's what allows us to grow. We're all stones. We're just lumps of stones in water when we start in martial arts. We're next to useless. And we move through, and eventually we become this glorious rich stew. And that creative process is what gives me the freedom. That's what we all should be aspiring to in everything that we do, because that ability to make something from nothing is incremental. We add little bits, we add a little bit extra, and we move away from what we weren't until we become so much more than what we ever thought we were capable of. Now, at this point, there was a 10-minute demonstration I was going to help you guys interact with. We can't do that right now. So what I'm instead going to give you is a breathing exercise that was taught to me. Now, this is something that you'll find in many, many other disciplines. And the reason this is something that I still teach actively is when I need those moments in time, such as when you get a phone call off the organizer of the creativity conference saying, Jay, are you ready to join us in the meeting? And you're absolutely not. You need to find an ability to bring yourself back to that present moment, that creative process. And this is the AUM principle, A-U-M, AUM. So it's just 3 letters that we combine to make an overall noise. Some of you may have seen this before, some of you may have heard this before, but it's something that I still do to this day. And I did about 30 minutes ago. Okay, so sit nice and straight, sit up from here. And the first noise we're going to make is the A sound. Now this goes, just let that A come out, okay? So 3, 2, 1, we're going to do that down with the R. Good. Can't hear you, but I know you're doing well. Take the U, which is the middle one. I'm going to do that one. So you see when we go, that's high. That's low, in the middle. Now we take the final one, which is the M. Now you find there's a resonance in the whole body when we do this. Excuse me. So we go, Each piece resonates at a different frequency, and you feel different parts of your body hitting that at different times. Okay, so now we go, we're going to take that whole thing all the way through. So before we do that, though, we're going to inhale through the nose and fill the abdomen. So most people, when we breathe, and this is a great tip I'll give you, most people do this, and they feel here. What I want you to do is put your hand on your tummy and go here and expand out. Okay, this is called abdominal breathing. Okay, so go. Feel that? Now I can feel the chest as well. This gets much more energy, much more efficient breathing in the body. Okay, so we're going to breathe in, fill the abdomen, and then we're going to make that ow noise all the way down. Okay, so 3, 2, 1, in, out. One more time. 1, 2, 3. Now notice as you go through that, you get this vibration that builds, spreads, and shifts through the whole body. What you're doing is resonating with the frequency. There are a lot of stories, there are a lot of tales, there are a lot of anecdotes going around that they once heard the frequency of the sun using the various NASA stuff that they had, and it made this resonant noise. Whether you choose to believe that or not is entirely up to you. There's the belief it's a universal frequency, which is why it's found in so many disciplines. What you'll find with this is that what I find is at those times when there's a little bit of high stress or I just need to focus on something individually, I'll hit this 3 times. A-U-M, aum. It's just like, oh. And it just brings everything down and calms you down, presents you, and anchors you and centers you in the moment. Then you can contract it. So we're going to do the one more time, and then we're going to put a contraction in there. Okay, so inhale. Good. That's our 3 pieces. So you started off, we had A-U-M. We did the ah, we did the oo, we did the Then we did the as one continual thing. In terms of the process, we've gone from the individual blocks, then we've combined them. Bearing in mind, this takes weeks, months, years to get to this level. This is literally as condensed as this thing can get. Now we're going to take that whole thing and we're going to resonate the sound. So instead of going aum, it's going to be one noise. Aum. Okay. So it's that same thing. That's the aim inhale in. And now we're going to go. A lot quicker, a lot more solid. Okay. So ready. 1, 2, 3. In. Out. One more. In. Out. One of the things you should have noticed is when the time we get to that third point, there's no break between the sounds and noises that we're doing anymore. We're not at and we're not oh. It's one. Oh. Everything flows together. What we just done in a microcosm is the creative process physically as it applies to martial arts, as it applies to how we express our bodies. We start with simple building blocks. Then we look at how those building blocks interact with each other.
I just want to let you know that we have 5 more minutes left. You can finish the presentation or Q&A or a little bit of both.
Thank you. I'm literally winding this up now, so then we'll hit maybe Q&A if anybody's got any. Then as we go through, we go from partiality to fragmented rather, to partiality to totality. So that process takes us all the way through those things. That same principle applies to what we do, whether we're painting, whether we're sculpting, whether we're acting, whatever. And it's a very, very fundamentally powerful grasp. Once you understand it, everything else can make more sense, because all you need to know is recognize at what point you are in this process. And then all you've got to do is just move to the next point in that process until where you're going. The aum, if I leave you with only one thing from today, if you do that in the morning for 2 to 3 minutes and in the evening for 2 to 3 minutes, you will find a really fantastic impact on what you're doing physically and what you're doing mentally and what you're doing spiritually. It's a great settling thing. And that is the end of the lecture, albeit certainly a marked departure from what I had planned for this morning. I thank you for bearing with me, and I hope there's at least something that you can take away from that.
Thank you, Jay. If anybody has any questions, feel free. I know you're muted, just to write it in the chat bubble. It's at the bottom of your screen in the middle. I do have a question.
Sure.
So you were talking about like living in the present, and that's ultimately will make you successful. And you said that martial arts has taught you this. Was there a specific situation or moment that you realized this, whether it was physically martial arts or if it was another situation in your everyday life?
Yeah, it was. It was when I was under a 165-pound man. Now, bear in mind, I'm 6'2" and 225 pounds. Okay, I'm not a tiny dude. I'm not huge, but I'm not tiny. At the time, I was still 6'2", but I was 190 pounds. I was a little stouter. And I've been training for quite a few years. And the gentleman's name was Jack McVicker. He was a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu coach. And I found that although I was bigger, stronger, and able to fight, this 165-pound man was able to basically crush every ounce of air out of my being, put my arm where it shouldn't go, and my head somewhere where it shouldn't go as well, almost at will. And I was pushing and I was struggling. And the more I did this, the more he was able to knock 10 bells out of me. When I stopped fighting and when I just allowed myself to for want of a better word, let the waves wash over me, I was able to go with that flow that little bit better. Now, it didn't necessarily mean that I was able to beat him. It just meant it was a damn sight harder for him to beat me, because I was no longer trying to push him off. I wasn't worried about the fact, well, what I've done, I'm a big, strong guy. I'm bigger than him. I'm stronger than him. I'm faster than him. Past. That was ego talking. Fear. The future. Oh, I've got to get him off me. I don't want to hit armbar. Crush, whatever. Being in that moment, reacting to what I had there and then, that was a lesson. What's funnier is the same guy that I was teaching with 6 months later, his instructor came in, who was about 130 pounds. I did the same thing to him and to me. So that was one of the biggest revelations. And it's that willingness to let go. As my teacher always says, memento mori, you are going to die. We're all going to die. It's the only inevitability in this life. It's that ability to, rest in the moment and be at one with that chaos. So that was it. And that encapsulation of chaos, that ability, that being crushed, that's a tremendous microcosm for life. Because once someone's crushing the air out of you, what's stress at work going to be,